Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about Vanished into the Night. Vanished into the Night is an Italian dramatic thriller that tells the story of Pietro, a family man going through a tumultuous divorce process with his wife Elena. The two agree for Pietro to take their kids to his villa for the evening, which starts off well enough, but ends in horror when Pietro wakes up to find them missing. Shortly after this discovery, Pietro learns that his kids have been taken by kidnappers seeking a ransom, and he has a limited amount of time to gather the money needed to free them. Pietro cooperates with his ex-wife as he races against time to try and gather the money before time runs out. This movie started off well enough on account of its tense atmosphere and intriguing setup, but it slowly unraveled into mediocrity the longer it went on. It still somewhat succeeds in maintaining some suspense, but the bland characters and ridiculous narrative twist hamper the enjoyment. The main character Pietro doesn't have a whole lot going on for him personality-wise, which is unfortunate because he actually does start off on the right foot. I like how he's initially portrayed as this family man who tries to do the best he can for his kids, but he also has a dark past that slowly creeps back into his life. There's a lot to explore with Pietro, but the movie never runs anywhere with it. Any details of his past quickly get shuffled to the wayside with Pietro's obsessive focus on finding his kids. This by itself isn't bad, but it's pretty generic, so the lack of development over his shady past is unfortunate because it could have added a lot more meat to this movie's bones. Pietro's wife Elena is even less memorable in comparison. She's not much help to the investigation, and doesn't really factor into the movie's events until later in the story. Apart from the fact that she's an American living abroad, I just can't think of anything about her that stands out. I will say it is nice to see a more cooperative dynamic between her and Pietro in terms of how they handle their family throughout the divorce. While I am a bit puzzled at the inconsistency between them speaking in Italian and English, I still appreciate that they aren't the typical bitter exes. At its core, the movie is a simple kidnapping story where a parent has to find their missing children, and even then, it's still more basic than it lets on. All Pietro has to do is get a large sum of money and drop it off to get his kids. That's it. It's a shame because throughout the first act and part of the second, it feels like the movie's gonna go much deeper. It drops all these hints about Pietro's criminal past and his gambling addiction, and I was fully expecting to see some kind of payoff, but it just doesn't happen. Now, in fairness, the movie does a great job with how it builds things up, even if it doesn't come together as well as it should. It perfectly captures the panic and desperation that a parent would experience when their children go missing, and events escalate in interesting ways. Pietro has to scour the area for any kind of opportunity to make money, which not only sees him getting involved in crime, but experiencing mishaps along the way. Nothing seems to go the way he wants it to, and the setbacks he faces over the uncertainty of the fate of his children does generate some tension as events proceed. There's an air of mystique that surrounds these events. The dark soundtrack, the nighttime cinematography, and just the hint of something bigger at play behind the kidnappings does an excellent job at keeping the pace going. But unfortunately, it can only hold up for so long. About halfway through the movie, I started losing patience with how the story unfolded. I became less immersed due to the increasing number of silly events that happen in it, much of it having to do with Pietro's random associate, Nicola. He's hinted at being some kind of figure from Pietro's sordid past, but he becomes more goofy over time, and his role ultimately goes unexplained. The movie makes use of a number of flashbacks and cutaways to try and give some context to what's going on, but they don't always work. Sometimes they're repeats of events that just happened moments ago, and most of the time they're just distracting to the main story at hand. I could forgive some of the sillier moments in the movie with how Pietro goes about the money situation if it had led to a satisfying ending, but unfortunately that's not the case. Instead of leading to the outcome one might expect, maybe with a little bit of a surprise, this movie completely pulls the rug out from under the audience and makes one of the most unnecessary twists I've ever seen. Now at this point, the movie proceeds more or less as you'd expect, with Pietro looking for the money, finding a way to get it, and then having to navigate the seedy underbelly of his town to deliver the ransom. It's predictable, but at least it builds towards something with Pietro getting in over his head and maybe revealing the truth over his criminal connections. And then all of a sudden, everything goes upside down. While I do appreciate that the twist doesn't occur right at the end of the movie, and it does give the audience some time to digest everything that happens, it doesn't change how rushed and poorly thought out it is. Once it occurs, all the plot threads surrounding Pietro's past gets tossed aside, and because everything else comes to light by then, the movie loses all form of suspense. It's disappointing to see a movie fizzle out into nothing during the final act where everything is supposed to come to a head, especially since everything else beforehand goes pretty well. The runtime is at a good length, scenes don't drag longer than they need to, and there's something admirable in the simplicity of the storyline it aimed for before the twist ruins everything. It just leaves a lot more questions than answers when it's all said and done, which isn't exactly what a thriller like this should be going for. If it had stayed straightforward like it did in the beginning, it would have turned out more cohesive, but sadly we'll never know for sure how it could have turned out. Overall, Vanished into the Night is a mediocre dramatic thriller that succeeds in capturing the audience's attention in the beginning, but fails to hold it in the long run. If you like thrillers with a kidnapping theme behind them and don't mind random twists completely changing the story, you might enjoy checking this out. This is one of those movies that I wanted to like a lot more than I did in the end. It starts off strong and is able to keep some momentum going for a while, but it doesn't take long before the weak script and characters throw things off. It's entertaining enough, but it ultimately vanishes into mediocrity. What did you think about this movie? Were you kept in suspense throughout the whole story, or did the twist bother you as well? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of Vanished into the Night. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part where next time I review the Spanish sports drama, The Champion. Bye bye!